This week in Arsenal, the Gunners continue the revenge tour by trouncing Newcastle 4-1. Edu gives a rare pre-match interview. Zinchenko and Party reportedly are close to returns, and a trip to Sheffield United awaits. Let's get into it.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.
Bukayo Saka! That is a diamond of a goal!
Welcome in to This Week in Arsenal, episode 48. As always, I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. And of course, I am joined as ever by the one, the only Sash at LT Arsenal. Sash, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing pretty good, to be honest. It's the start of a new week. Always a bit of sadness when it's Monday. But it's been a really good weekend, obviously, with Arsenal playing so well. 6 wins in a row now in the Premier League. So a lot to be happy about, a lot to cheer about. So you can say that despite it being a Monday, I'm going into the week with a lot of positivity, a lot of energy, courtesy, that amazing performance by Arsenal, taking revenge against Newcastle. So yeah, it made my weekend and looking forward to the week ahead. And obviously it's going to be another week for Arsenal's next match. So it's quite the wait. But yeah, going into the week in high spirits. How about yourself, Sham?
I'm good. Yeah. Sorry I couldn't make the last episode, but I did manage to catch a bit of it when I landed in Arizona at the beginning of the weekend. So that looking forward to checking out the rest of it. I'm in day 2 of my hangover from my bachelor weekend. So if I'm a little slow today, I apologize in advance. Not just to you, but to those of you watching on YouTube and those of you watching on Twitter. Yeah, we're gonna bring our A game today, and we're gonna get into the Newcastle match. Before we get going on that, though, just some housekeeping matters. If you're watching on YouTube, and honestly, if you're watching on Twitter as well, please check us out on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow the channel, ring that bell for notifications for whenever we post videos, which we're trying to get into a better groove about doing. I have one about whether or not Bukayo Saka is world class, which you should definitely check out if you have not. And be sure to follow the pod at This Week Arsenal on Twitter. And yeah, thanks for being here with us. So, obviously, we entered the Newcastle match reeling from that 1-0 defeat at Porto, which you covered with FK last week. And this was. I think it's best to start by prefacing, what exactly this match meant for us, right? On kind of multiple different fronts. First of all, you had kind of the obvious thing, which was when we played them last, they won 1-0 off of one of the most controversial, should have been disallowed goals I've ever seen, where the ball went out of bounds. That's been confirmed by Joe Willock at this point. And Joe Linton shoved Gabriel out of the way in midair so that Anthony Gordon could score the winner, and that somehow was allowed to stand. Obviously, Mikel would call it a disgrace in his post-match interview, and of course, the FA would charge him, and there was that whole saga, right? So, that's kind of like the first leg of the importance of this game, was to get our revenge on a team that has been terrible since they got that win, has frankly been in relegation form. And then on top of that, right, we lost 1-0 to Porto, and we have this bad habit. Whenever we lose games, we backslide. It turns into a string of defeats. And, we needed to kind of get that monkey off of our backs and prevent people and the media and the pundits from, really talking about how we didn't have this mentality, how we weren't a team that was going to win. So, Sash, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts, before we actually start talking about the game itself, as to just how important this game was in your mind, in your opinion?
I think super important, right? Obviously, this is a title race, a three-horse title race, and Arsenal are currently the third favorites in it, just by the points table alone. So losing a match would mean we were back where we were some weeks ago, 5 points behind Liverpool. And from that position, when you're 5 points behind someone, you either bridge the gap or you're completely out of it. So I think for Arsenal to be in the race and to be up there, this win was really important. I also think it was important because we had won 5 Premier League games in a row. And usually, what happens when we win 5 Premier League games in a row is that we usually draw the sixth one, apart from once last season where we won 7 games in a row. But that was an anomaly. And last season as well, when we had won 5 games in a row, the sixth game we had to play was Newcastle at home, and we famously, or rather infamously, drew that game 0-0. And that was the start, I guess, of like the Arsenal Newcastle rivalry, if I might put it that way. Depends how you define a rivalry, but I think this fixture is really fiercely contested. And what makes it so special, this fixture is like both the teams cannot stand each other. I think the way Newcastle play football makes every team they play dislike them. But I guess with the history that Arsenal have against Newcastle in recent games, like the Jorginho versus Bruno G, the way the defenders keep fouling, the number of fouls they do on Saka, they're probably one of the most ugliest teams to play against. And for us to actually get over this line and put this team where they belong, play them out of the park, I think it was absolutely essential. And that's exactly what Arsenal did. So I think from a performance point of view, it was really important to carry on that momentum. We won 6-0, we won 5-1, we won 4-1. The decline is sad to see, but it's good that we're still scoring many goals every match. So yeah, this win especially was a very special one. And I think it's important because, we need to now carry on the momentum. 6 wins in a row. We're playing away to Sheffield United, a game we're expected to win. But again, this is the Premier League. Not every game can be taken for granted. But it just gives us that momentum that, okay, let's put that Porto defeat behind us and let's focus on the Premier League. So I think it was super important, Sham. But what did you make of it? Do you think we were exceptional, or do you think Newcastle were just appalling? Because I did think Newcastle were really bad, to be honest. But also, you can say we made them look that way because every time Arsenal plays someone, they're like, oh, the opposition is not good. Fair enough. But you also have to give us credit, don't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, because ever since the Liverpool game, right, when you had Liverpool fans coming out and saying, oh, we were just bad that day, right? I think we make teams look bad, right? And that's kind of in line with the way that Arteta wants Arsenal to play, right? Where he's all about dominating the game, right? And how do you do that? You keep them from possessing the ball. You keep them from being in areas where they can impact the game. You prevent them from doing anything good, really. So whenever teams look bad against us, sure, there's always a decent chance that's because they're bad on the day, but I think it's far more likely that's because of how our game plan is designed, right? We were pressing them into so many mistakes on the ball. They didn't have a sniff in midfield. They were threatening once, over the course of the entire game, and that was Willock's goal. Even with Isak returning to the lineup, we managed to keep that in check, right? Yeah, and I just think that as terrible as Newcastle have been, they're a team that has enough quality in there where if you let them into the game, they'll take advantage, right? Their main problem so far has been defense. Defensively, they've been atrocious, but they still have, Anthony Gordon, and I think Miguel Almiron is good here and there, right? He can be threatening in the right circumstances. I think Isak is one of the best strikers in the Premier League, frankly. I think Lewis Miley, if you give him enough time, he can hurt you, and things of that nature. So, just because they're bad doesn't mean that you have to stop taking them seriously. And we took them seriously enough to really stifle them until we were 4-0 up and let them, get that consolation goal. Wait, you're Sash, you're on mute.
Sorry. Even in my opinion, it's final because it's an academy player who scored the goal. As my friend Walid tweeted out, it's final. It means it's still an Arsenal player who scored the goal. So we take that. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how Newcastle respond from here, because they're clearly a side under pressure after all their recent results, and their thuggery has not been working off late. So I'm interested to see how they respond. Also, they can't even spend huge due to FFP. So, all this talk of Newcastle, they've done really well. Fair play to them. Champions League football, great.
Yeah.
But, it's not so easy to go to that next level. And I think the only team that's really made that push from getting Champions League to competing with Liverpool and Man City is Arsenal. No other team has done that. Ever since Conte won the league for Chelsea in 2017, there's only been two teams, Man City and Liverpool. No other team has even been in the conversation for the title, not even one.
Yeah.
Arsenal are the only team since last season and even this season that have come. I think that's a huge thing, personally. I think that's a massive thing. And sometimes we as fans need to sometimes just take stock of how far we've come. Because I agree, I'm also not the nicest person when we lose a match. I'm often over emotional, over the top. But I think as fans, we really need to look at the bigger picture here. Like, for 20 fucking years, we have not competed for the Premier League. For 20 years, right? Properly. Even the Birmingham capitulation. So I was not a proper Arsenal fan in 2007, by the way. The Birmingham capitulation was around February. It was not like it happened in May. Last season, we capitulated mid to end of April, which is not okay, but it's still something which is very commendable, that till the last few weeks we were there. And we are there even this season, and we will continue to be there. And one of these seasons, it's going to click. So I think really, we have to be super optimistic about this team. But having said that, I want to touch upon the game a bit more. One of the changes that Mikel had made was he brought on Jorginho for Trossard. Actually, it was what we wanted against Porto as well. It was not to be the case. But I think he played the 11 that everyone wanted against Porto, against Newcastle. And immediately when Jorginho is on that football pitch, you see that there is a difference in the way we control the match. There's something different to it, and I've been trying to think, what is it about Jorginho that makes him so special, that makes him make others play better? And during the game, one thing became evidently clear for me. It's not what people say that he plays line-breaking passes unlike Declan Rice. I don't buy that, because Declan Rice has been a progressive passer, right? But Jorginho, he releases the ball so quickly. I think that's why he's different from most players. When Maurizio Sarri was asked about him a few seasons ago when he was Chelsea manager, what he said was that what separates Jorginho from Kante in that sixth position is that Kante, as good as he is defensively, and he's very good on the ball as well, he does not release the ball quickly enough, But Jorginho has that footballing brain to play in that position. He makes things look so simple. And you saw even for the goal Newcastle scored that, he's not physically so good. But on the ball, what he brings is exceptional, and it just makes everyone better around him. So, Sham, I want to ask you, do you think that was the biggest factor for the way we played, having Jorginho there? Or would you say it's down to Havertz leading the line? Or do you think it was just Arsenal turning on the day? Like, what are your thoughts on these things?
I think I'll put it to you like this, right? I think that second goal was everything that we should have done against Porto, right? Where you had Martinelli making that great diagonal run across the defense, getting into a good spot. Jorginho, having the skill and the boldness and the bravery to play that ball over the top to Martinelli. And then, on top of, Jorginho's playmaking ability and Martinelli's industry, you had Kai Havertz, who I think, for all intents and purposes, I wouldn't call Kai Havertz a flop anymore this season. If you want to say he's not worth the money, I don't think I can argue with you yet. But I think at this point, Havertz has shown his worth. He's at 9 goal contributions already this season, right? So you have the ball from Jorginho, you have the run from Martinelli, and then Havertz ghosts into the box and makes this really nice run to trick the defender and then just get into space and tap the ball home to make it 2-0. That goal, like I said, is everything that we should have done against Porto, where we didn't have anyone in midfield who was willing to play those passes over the top, or play those through balls to get in behind the defense. We weren't making use of Martinelli that way, and I really think we should have. And as good as Trossard is, is more of a guy you play to, he's more of a false 9, right? I think Havertz is a good tip of the spear as well. And the thing that Havertz has over Trossard as a center forward is Havertz makes people uncomfortable. We saw it against, there's this conversation going on Twitter right now about how Van Dijk is the best Premier League center back of all time, which I happen to agree with, right? But Havertz made him see nightmares on the pitch with his movement and with his physicality and his willingness to get stuck in, right? That's not Trossard's game. That's not something I hold against Trossard, but that's what Havertz is able to do. He's able to make center backs uncomfortable. He makes these really smart movements in the box and is able to find space on a pretty regular basis. And we needed someone like that against Porto, because Porto were playing, you saw me lose my head after that game, but they were playing the deep block Stoke City, tactic from hell, where they were just sitting back. Brexit ball. Yeah, basically. And I think the way to beat that is to be brave on the ball and is to play a center back who can actually be a real focal point, and serve either as like a fulcrum in offense or, make those runs in behind and ghost into the box and find those spaces. So yeah, I think Havertz, honestly, even if Jesus comes back, I think he might be our best center forward option in more games than not. So yeah, but I think that all does start with Jorginho. That all does start with someone who is sitting in that 6 pocket and sees the game and is able to pull those strings and and activate moves like that and help control the game. I mean, it goes back to what you and I have been saying for a while, which is love him or hate him, you probably need one of Jorginho or Zinchenko in these games where teams aren't going to come out and play us. You know what I mean? And we're more often than not, we play teams like that. We face the lowest blocks in Europe, and teams just don't really come out and attack us anymore, except for not even the Champions League, actually. So yeah, I think Jorginho is probably one of our best weapons against teams like that, and I have to wonder why he didn't feature against Porto. Maybe it was an injury or something. But yeah, I think we should use Jorginho in these situations as often as we can at this point, at least until Zinchenko's back.
Yeah. I think he was probably injured against Porto, or like not fully fit, because Arteta was mentioning as well that he was carrying an injury and he was not, playing much. And I think that's the reason why we're being a bit conservative with him, not making him play too much. And I think it's important we manage him well, especially in the absence of Thomas Partey. If you want to have a plan B, or you have a 6 and Rice in the free role, you're going to need Georgie fit, and that's just the reality, because Partey is super unreliable. Like, you never know when he's going to be fit. So I think it was important to manage Jorginho well. And obviously, I think Arteta decided to prioritize the Newcastle match over the Champions League match. Not saying he threw the Champions League game away, not by any means. But I think, the Champions League, he went with a slightly different approach. I don't think it worked. But, it's not over yet. Like, we still have a second leg that we can still play and win. So it happens. We lost one match against the solid Porto side with an incredible goal in the last kick of the game. We've brushed that aside, and now we won 6 games in a row in the league. So I think that's really positive. Now I'm going to diverge away from the game for a moment. And there was a comment we got on Rio Ferdinand. So Iceberg Camp asked, did you see Rio's comments about Arteta?
Oh, I've been making
did.
jokes about them before we started.
I did. And I just have one thing to say, okay? I think when Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, any of the guys at Stock Sport, when these guys open their mouth, we need to not react, okay? Because these guys feed off interactions from Arsenal fans. They want us to react. They want us to quote their tweets, to engage with their content. That makes them money, and we constantly get wound up as a fan base, and that includes me as well, right? Because when you're scrolling Twitter after a day of work and you see guys like Rio Ferdinand or Gary Neville sprouting absolute garbage, you obviously tend to react. But I think as Arsenal fans, we need to practice a bit of stoicism, a bit of self-control here, and not react. Okay. When you don't react, they don't get the engagements that they want. And then they'll be like, if there's no point even making these outlandish statements, right? So sensationalism sells on social media. Everyone knows this. And I think as Arsenal fans, we need to be wiser. We also need to stop seeking validation from some of these guys. Just look at the team, watch your team, enjoy it. Enjoy the fact that we're in title race for the second season in a row, for the first time in 20 years. Don't give a shit about what any of these pundits say. Just watch and enjoy your team. Their opinions don't matter, right? I don't care what Jamie Carragher thinks about Bukayo Saka. I don't care, okay? That's the reality. I don't care. We know how good Saka is. We know. That's enough for me. So I think that's the mentality as fans also that we need to have. Stop engaging. Be happy with your team. Be proud of your team. Be positive and brush off these things. But how do you see it, Sham? What are your thoughts on these comments? Because it's not just Rio, as I mentioned, like today, but it's been a lot of these pundits, celebrations, and making these outlandish statements. Like, how do you see this?
The Ferdinand comments? Yeah. I want to, because I do echo what you said, right? I really try now not to engage with the original content that these guys put out, right? If they put out a tweet saying, Rio Ferdinand thinks this, I'm not quote tweeting that. I'll make a separate tweet and make fun of them with my own words, but I'm not giving them the engagements. But I guess what I want to say is it's really sad where English football media has gone, right? And I actually think in the States, we're very lucky because NBC Sports has, the two Robbies. And, they weren't like big players in their careers as footballers, but I think they are two very sensible pundits, right? They don't say crazy shit like, I think Arteta will leave Arsenal to go manage Manchester United. I don't know what's worse, Ferdinand saying that for the interactions or Ferdinand genuinely believing that. But yeah, I just think it's sad because we in the States we get to watch these two guys just very earnestly and genuinely try to talk about the football that they're watching and give their honest thoughts on teams. They're not always right, but they engage in good faith, which I think is what is better than I can say for the likes of Neville and Carragher and Ferdinand, because these guys they feel like spokespeople for their former clubs half the time. They come out and say these crazy things, and they put down Arsenal because they know it does numbers. And then when you get mad at them, right, for unprofessional and trollish behavior, they'll come out and say, "Oh, I'm just kidding, guys. Like, why are you taking it so seriously? Arsenal fans are such crybabies." Because your job is to educate the masses on football. That's your job. Your mandate as pundits at the highest echelon of this industry is to make people more educated and more thoughtful football enjoyers, right? And when you just sit around and say stupid shit like, "Oh, Phil Foden, who played 60 minutes over the final 3 legs of the Champions League for Manchester City, is world class, and Bukayo Saka isn't because he didn't play in a Champions League final." That's pathetic. So yeah, I'm really at this point. I'll keep making the jokes because I think it's funny, but I'm really at this point where I'm trying not to pay as much attention to them because we know what the game is over there. And, I've said this 1,000 times. Other people have said this 1,000 times. There's a reason why football fans generally are flocking towards fan-made content more and more these days. And it's because what's on, Sky Sports and all this other stuff that people have to pay actual money for is just gibberish half the time. So, Ferdinand can keep making those comments. No one's really going to take him seriously as a pundit. And we know what's right when it comes to that kind of thing. So that's what I have to say on it. Sash, you're on mute again.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head there with your analysis on Rio. But you did speak about a guy, Saka, and I want to get into Bukayo Saka because screw these pundits. Bukayo Saka scored Arsenal's third goal of the night, which I think absolutely put the game to bed. A beautiful goal, superb finish from a difficult angle, I would say, because he really had to bend it in, so it was not easy by any means. But yeah, Saka, people were saying some seasons ago, this guy has to start scoring. He's now scored in 5 consecutive Premier League games. And he's become the first player since Olivier Giroud, who did it 10 years ago, to achieve this feat. So I think that's super impressive, Sham, honestly. Like he's, first of all, not even a striker. He's playing out wide. He's 22, and he's come from like the Arsenal academy from the time he was 8, 9. And for him to do it on the biggest stage in the Premier League, it just tells you, I think, how special this guy is. And every season, he has improved his numbers. Right from the time he started his days at left back and then left wing. In the first few games, he played as a right winger. It seemed to me like this guy is not a right winger. He should be playing on the left. But then few games later, he's mastered dribbling angles that I've not even seen from him before. So you give some credit to Arteta, obviously, but I think this is just a special talent with an incredible IQ. Everything about him is so perfect. His character, the way he conducts himself on the pitch, off the pitch. I just think to myself, what an example this guy is for every youngster or every professional doing anything they want to do in their career. So I think this guy is like an inspiration to so many people. And I think the only thing that's missing really is for him to win the big honors, win that Champions League, win that Premier League, for him to really go, I guess, into the Hall of Fame of football, because what he's doing now is really special. He's carrying this Arsenal team on his back. So Sham, I want to get some positive words from you on Bukayo Saka. I think we do this every week on the podcast where we say Saka, how special is he? But yeah, I'd like you to take the stage and tell me how special he is.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I just did the video on this, so it's fresh in my head. This is, I think, Saka's 3rd season consecutively leading the club in goal contributions. And, last season he was head and shoulders above everyone else. And this season he's doing it again at an even better rate, right? Last season he finished with 26 goals and assists. This season, not even counting the assist he had in the Community Shield, he has 28 goal contributions. And we still have like a third of the season to go.
Crazy.
Which are elite numbers, by the way.
And
If you hit
to click as well offensively, right? Like we've not clicked offensively the whole season.
That's the thing. Like he's been putting it on his shoulders, and he's doing this in the Premier League and he's doing this in the Champions League, 2 of the hardest competitions you can play in. And he's almost at 30 goals and assists on the season, which I think is crazy. What I said in the video about Saka was that you have elite players, which in my mind are, probably the top 10 players in every position, right? And within those elite players, you have world-class ones. And world-class players are elite players who have consistently performed at a really high level over, an extended period of time, which I like to think of as 2 years plus. And have done it no matter the environment, right? And Saka, for me, fits that definition. Depending on whether or not you consider Messi a right winger still, Saka's either the second or third best right winger in the world behind Mohamed Salah. And yeah, I agree. There's all that's left for him is to start lifting, the serious trophies, the Premier Leagues and then the Champions Leagues and all that, for him to kind of hit that third bracket of being a truly, generational, legendary player. So I just think it's crazy to watch what he's doing and kind of think to yourself that he is still a few years off his peak, right? I think wingers peak like around like 25, 26, if I remember correctly. And he's only 22, right? So he's just going to get better and better. He's going to do crazier and crazier things. And, I'm just, I just think we're really lucky to have him at the club, honestly, given the circumstances he came in during. And yeah, immensely talented player. I don't have the time of day for people's thoughts on him who haven't watched him. Yeah, just a supremely talented player and probably our talisman at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's not even so far down the pecking order in terms of wearing the captain's armband. I think he's already worn the captain's armband this season. So it's like for his age to actually do that is crazy, and nobody could have predicted this. Like everyone knew he was a talented player the moment he came on, but he would reach these heights, nobody can predict that. And yeah, I mean, even in terms of the academy, people were saying Reece Nelson was the guy who's like the best in the academy. Like, I'm not saying Saka was bad. I think Saka was very good, obviously, in the academy, but he was still not getting the hype that someone like a Reece Nelson got. But it just goes to show you that sometimes how you are at even 17 in academy level, it need not translate exactly the same way at senior level. It might even be better depending on how you progress. And I think obviously Saka's had a really good set of people around him, coaching staff. Even Unai Emery, to be fair to him, gave him the chance some years ago. I think he's had like good people around him at the club to guide him. And he's been through some really toxic days with us some years ago, but he's come through that all. And that tweet, of his will always stay with me, where he says, "You deserve more, Arsenal fans." So like I'll always remember that because it's one of the worst phases to support this club. And
he's doing it. He's
doing it.
Yeah, he's bringing us more. So
yeah. I don't know if all fans deserve it, but yeah, certainly most fans do. And yeah, he's I think absolutely cooking for us this season. But I want to for a second move away from the game again before we come to the end of the match. We have a question from Lookman. He says, "What's the bare minimum we're expecting from the team from now till the end of the season?" You know what? I've actually given up regarding the goals for the season. I just want to enjoy each and every single game, enjoy football, without thinking about the result. What was meant to be is meant to be. And I just don't think it's worth stressing over. Obviously, it'll be good if we can win the league or the Champions League. I think that's the aim. I think that's the best case scenario, winning the league and Champions League. I think a top class scenario is winning the league or winning the Champions League. And the worst case scenario is not that bad, which is, failing in the Champions League for the first time in like 7-8 years you're playing. Okay, you're failing in that and you're finishing third in the Premier League behind City and Liverpool. It's not good. We want to be better than this, but that's the worst case scenario, So I'm just trying to be calm and level-headed here and take it game by game. But how do you see it, Sham? How do you see this season panning out?
Yeah, in terms of bare minimum, I'll put it to you like this. I'll be very disappointed and very disappointed doesn't mean that I'm asking for Arteta's head or anything, but I will be very disappointed if the season ends with us going out in this current round of the Champions League against Porto and we are out of the title race with a significant amount of time to go, shall we say? Because I do think it is a big ask to demand the Champions League in your first season back in it in 7 years. Granted, I do think we, after City and after Real Madrid, I kind of do consider us the third best team in the competition. So, there is that to keep in mind. And then with the title race, City are resurgent. De Bruyne is back and still kicking. Haaland is still lethal. Foden, even despite the fact that I might have dunked on him 10 minutes ago, I think he's also having a very good season. Bernardo Silva is still very helpful. So they look pretty scary right now. Liverpool, I think they could falter with the number of injuries they have, or they could just through sheer willpower stay in the title race until the end for Klopp. So I think we need to compete with that, but it is those are difficult circumstances to win a title in. So just to sum that up, get past the round of 16, stay in the competition, or stay in the league title race until at least May. Hey, Alex.
Bit of love for you in the comments, huh?
Mm-hmm. Alex, I'm still supremely hungover, so thank you for that. But yeah, so those are my like bare minimums on the season, right? That's what I'm expecting now, based on how we've played, based on the trajectory we're at, and even if we do hit those, right? There is a post-mortem to have over that run of form that we had at the end of December, right? Which, if we don't win the title, is, I think, what's going to be what cost us that. So yeah, but in general, I feel really good about where we are, especially after this month. Especially after this month, where I saw like a graphic with all our results in February, right? We had the 5-0 win against West Ham, and then the 2-0 win against Nottingham, or sorry, not 2-0, 2-1 win against Nottingham Forest, 3-1 against Liverpool, 6-0 against West Ham, 5-0 against Burnley, 4-1 against Newcastle, right? Those are some crazy big score lines. And the fact that we've now turned it on attacking wise, while still being just so ridiculously good defensively, that makes me really excited for what the future holds, unless the next 2 months are an absolute dumpster fire, right? I feel really good about where Arsenal is. And by the way, we're doing this without Jurrien Timber, who we signed, I think, effectively to either be our left back or to kind of be how we transition away from Thomas Partey. And we're doing this without an absolute killer at center forward, which I think is something that we still should be looking into. But, now I don't think we need a center forward for us to, or I'll phrase it like this. I don't think we need a center forward to be the guy who bangs in all the goals for us, right? So, yeah, I feel really good. Those are my bare minimums, and I think we will hit them.
Yeah. We have a comment from Awais who says our biggest threat are strong defensive teams: Atletico, Porto, Inter, Bayern. I sort of agree. So I think we're pretty good now at breaking deep blocks. I think so. I think this season we've actually done quite all right. We've created the chances, but we've not been ruthless enough in front of goal. But I do agree that some of these teams, I think Bayern, we will run through them because their midfield is non-existent. But I do think Atletico, Porto, and Inter, these are the types of teams that can cause us problems with their style, so they don't let us play through them in midfield. They're constantly fouling you and making sure like there's no continuity in the play. So these are the teams which shithouse the most. So these are the sort of teams I guess we are susceptible to. But I would say it's not just an Arsenal thing. I would say even a team like Man City or a team that's precise in how they move the ball around is also going to be susceptible to teams like these, But for me, still, I think against Porto or against Inter, we will create enough chances. It's about being ruthless, taking those chances, and not hitting the self-destruct button. Like Porto, the goal we conceded, I don't want to do too much analysis on that, but we gave the ball away in a very cheap way. We didn't manage the situation well enough, and it cost us. So for me, it's about let's focus on what we can control. Let's put the chances away when we get them. And yeah, let's just do the basics right, and I think we will be fine. But it'll be interesting to see, I think, how the next few games in the Premier League and even Champions League are. Obviously, we're on a high now of winning, and Arsenal have never won more than 7 games in a row under Mikel Arteta. So let's see if we can do it for the first time. I think that will be a huge statement. If we go maybe even 10, 12 games in a row continuously winning, that's the sort of run City normally go on when they win the league. So I think that's what we need from us. So yeah. And Olu Tawabi says we're playing Porto already. Inter's playing Tico. So definitely 2 of these teams. Yeah. So I think, in the Champions League, I think the threat is Man City, if I'm being honest. Like, that's the threat for us. Like, over 2 legs, beating Man City, not easy. I think even in an individual match, we can beat Man City. Like, we've shown we can do it. We did it in the Community Shield. People will say it's an irrelevant game, but look at the way the managers were celebrating in that game when their team scored. It obviously meant something. And even the Premier League match. So we can beat them in 1 game, but my concern is over 2 games. But Sham, which teams do you see as our biggest threats in the Champions League? Like, who do you think we should be super wary of?
I mean, I think it's probably City and Madrid, right? I think the other teams are annoying, but if we have a full squad, I think we have the tools in there to break down these teams, right? I think, if you have Timber, if you have Partey, if you have a fit Jorginho, if Zinchenko is around, those are all guys who, help open things up against these teams that like to defend deep, like to, foul you every chance they can get. So those aren't teams I'm particularly worried about. But also you're at the stage where there's no easy games anymore. City got the only easy game in the round of 16, and even that one, United struggled with. So from here on out, every team we get is going to give us a fight. But when it comes to City and Madrid, those are 2 teams who I think are so good that even if you execute the right game plan, they still have the talent on that roster to overrule it, if that makes sense. Like, we've beaten City twice this season, so I think we have the blueprint on how to do that, right? And Saliba and Gabriel together have a perfect record, basically, against Erling Haaland, which not many defenders on the planet can say, right? But at any moment, De Bruyne can play the perfect pass. Foden can get in, Haaland can get in, Bernardo Silva can fire in, a shot from 30 yards out, Rodri can latch onto a corner, right? These guys are some of the best players in the world. And the same applies to Real Madrid, right? Where, Vinny Jr. can just pull some crazy things out of the bag. That midfield, I think Madrid might actually have the best midfield in Europe, to be quite honest. Yeah, and Ancelotti just has a way of getting the best out of, superstars, which is a really underrated quality of his. So, yeah, there's just, I would call it fuck you talent on those teams. Like, the concept of fuck you money, they have fuck you talent. So those are the teams I worry about because there's no guarantees against them. I think against Atletico and Inter and those teams, yeah, sure, they could still do the same thing, but the percentage is so much lower. If you play teams that are good at dealing with low blocks, are good at moving the ball around quickly and playing those key passes into dangerous areas, I'd say 8 out of 10 times you're going to be okay. So that's where I'm at.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think with Real Madrid, they can be shit, but yeah, like you mentioned, they have the talent where they can just like in a moment just do something in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Olu says we need Timber and Party fit. We can go against Man City and Real Madrid, but it'll be tough still. But yeah, I think having Party and Timber fit for those games obviously makes a huge difference. And away says it all depends on our away form. The stage is set for Arsenal at Wembley. I agree because I think in the Emirates, in the Champions League, I think we'll be really up for it. But it's these away matches, hostile atmospheres. That's my concern, Can these players play with composure? Because against Porto, these guys just froze. Like they didn't play. They were so scared to play. So this is my concern, how we cope up. But yeah, I'm interested to see how we do. But Sham,
Yeah.
any questions, any closing thoughts as we approach 45-minute mark?
So there is one thing I wanted to kind of bring up, right? So, we scored another set piece goal again today, which, by the way, off the back of that, Declan Rice now is the player with the most assists in the league, I think, since the start of the new year, which is pretty crazy, honestly. But so John McKinsey, who you guys might know from the Tifo football videos, tweeted out that as of the Newcastle game, 31% of our total goals scored this season are from set pieces, which is a lot. That's a pretty historical figure. He said only one team that has ever gone on to win a title has scored more of their goals from set pieces. I think it was, I want to say City, 1920 or 21, 22, something like that.
Was stats even there for those seasons, like set pieces, like 1920s? Seems a bit odd to me.
No. Sorry, it's City from 21, 22.
21.
That's the one. Yeah. And then he also brought
you
up,
meant 1920 in the sense like
yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean like yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't mean from the Great Gatsby era. But yeah. So I just wanted to get your thoughts. Are you worried by the number of goals that we are scoring off of set pieces? Do you think that's a reliance that's going to, come back to haunt us, or is that just, a consistent and replicable way that we've found to, advance our game plan and, win games?
Look, I think there are two things we need to separate out here. Scoring from set pieces, absolutely okay. Relying only on set pieces, not okay, right? I think that's the distinction we want to make. Against Porto, our chances only came from set pieces. That is not okay, right? Against Newcastle, we created a lot of chances, and a couple of chances we scored from happened to be set pieces. That's totally okay. Scoring from set pieces is a good thing. It should be embraced. The problem I have sometimes, and only sometimes, is that we sometimes rely only on a set piece to break the deadlock. That is okay for the individual game that we're looking at. But at some point, yeah, in a difficult atmosphere like a Porto away, you're going to need someone to produce a moment of magic to break the deadlock, right? So that's the only thing. So I have no problem with the set piece goals. And yeah, as we have a comment here, he says, I'm not worried. It gives many collectives to hurt opponents, especially against low blocks. So yeah, it's just another way of attacking, another way of scoring. So I just view it in a very positive way, to be honest. But how do you view it? I think Nicolas Joa deserves huge credit, like for what he's done. And if we win the league, I think he gets as much credit as Arteta for me, because this season we have been very reliant on set pieces, and it's totally cool. But to score the amount we have done is super impressive. So fair play to him. And if I'm not mistaken, Nicolas Joa was also at Man City in that season, right? Which they won the league like 3 years ago.
He might have been, actually.
I think he was the set piece coach then. So this guy's just an offensive set piece magician, to be honest.
Yeah. I think if we win a title, then give Nicolas Jover whatever he wants, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of how I feel about it, I'm not worried. I don't. If we were scoring like 75% of our goals from set pieces, then yeah, I'd be concerned, right? But I think the reason people get worried is they think that it's not sustainable. But I've seen enough to realize that it's really sustainable, right? We have systems and tactics in place. We have an approach to this that very clearly has borne fruit on a pretty consistent basis recently. Um, and I think what a lot of people overlook is that when you're up against low blocks, you have to get a little creative about how you score because the space just is not there anymore, right? These are the game is more athletic. There are more elite talents in the game than ever before. So, even when you're up against your Evertons and your Newcastles and teams like that, teams are just gonna sit back in the box and put 10 men behind the ball and all that stuff. These guys are good enough players where at the very least they're going to cover all that ground, the penalty area, right? So you have to get very clever about not only how you play in how you perform in open play, but what you do from your set pieces. So for us to go and maximize that the way we have, right? And we have Declan Rice now taking our corners from the left side of the pitch, and Saka has been our corner taken from the right, and Gabriel very clearly is someone who we've put an emphasis on to aim for. When we play those crosses, we have Trossard running screens for some of our set pieces, right? We've really thought about this. We've really been in the lab with regard to what we do on our set pieces. So, when you do that and you score that first goal off a set piece and you change the game state so they have to come attack you to get something, we've shown that we're able to do that sustainably. So I actually think it's a credit and something to be encouraged about. And I personally think the next step in this is that we get good at winning penalties, right? And this season, I think we've already won the most penalties in the league so far, if I remember correctly. And that's another reason why I would be pretty excited if we signed Osimhen this summer, right? Because he's won a lot of penalties for Napoli. He won a couple for Nigeria during AFCON as well, right? That's a skill of his to get into the box and make defenders so uncomfortable that they commit those silly fouls in the box to give away the penalties. So I think that's the next step for us. But generally, just maximizing what we do in dead ball situations and making those more consistent and making those sustainable, reliable, consistent ways for us to put the ball in the back of the net, so that we're not just taking 25 shots from 0.07 xG positions on the pitch. I think that's really smart, and the recognition of that that leads to bringing in a guy like Nicholas Jover. I think that's another thing that makes our Mikel Arteta an elite manager. So yeah, no, I'm not worried about it either. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, and that might be something I talk about in a future video.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that. I do think, as we discussed, like Nicholas Jover, I think that's the next video for me. I want to do a video on him, on what his work at Arsenal, how he scored these goals from offensive set pieces. It's always nice to discuss, I think, on an even deeper level, how we are scoring these goals. And for that, we have to really have a look at all the set piece goals we scored to see what we're doing in these set pieces. So looking forward to your video on the set piece conundrum, and I will go deeper and try to actually see how we are scoring these set piece goals. But yeah, looking forward to making this content for all our viewers. It's been a very nice podcast, going live for the first time on Twitter. We had quite a few listeners, quite a few comments today. Thank you guys for all your thoughts on this podcast. But Sham, is there anything else you'd like to discuss, or are we?
No, I think that's it from me. I mean, we have the Sheffield United match coming up, but honestly, I'd be shocked if we didn't win that by 3 goals plus. Yeah.
Prediction. What's your prediction for that match?
Oh yeah. Okay. My prediction we need to figure out like a punishment for whoever loses at the end of the season. But my prediction for Sheffield United will be 4-0.
Okay. My prediction is 3-1 to Arsenal. I always go 3-1, and I'll hit that a few times. So let's see. Let's see what the result is.
We love 3-1 score lines.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Well, I will get that on the books. And of course, let us know your predictions as well for those of you who are watching. Just keep us on. 8-0. I would love that. I would love that personally. But yeah, like Sash said, excuse me. Sorry that we're starting a little bit late. We've been trying to, gussy up the live stream for everybody. We've got the logo up there now in the background, trying to make this look better and better as the pod grows. So, I think that's a good place to put a bow on this, right? Anything else? Yeah.
No, nothing
So
else.
yeah. So thank you all for being here with us. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, for those of you watching on YouTube or Twitter live, please go to our YouTube channel, This Week in Arsenal. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Really helps out, really means a lot. We're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers, so that would be a big help. And then, of course, you can follow Sash at LT Arsenal. You can follow myself at Shamsdale. You can follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. We will also be putting this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So for those of you listening on those platforms, please, leave a review, 5 stars. That really helps out. Apparently that's really useful for helping the pod get discovered by new listeners on those platforms. So we'd really appreciate that as well. But until then, we will talk to you after we almost certainly trounce Sheffield United at the weekend. And until then, be a gooner, don't be a goon, and we will talk to you soon. So until then, take care and bye-bye.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.